Hello and welcome to another edition of Fresh Outlook, where we take a look at the news affecting you. I'm Toschi. Thanks for spending an hour with us. We have an exciting show this week. We're going to talk about China's cyber attacks. Then we will move on to New York City's mayoral race. And lastly, we will talk about rising home prices. And as always, we have an exciting panel for you. We have media analyst Jackie Guzda and political analyst Dee Dee Benkie joining us for our first segment. We always thank you for being here. Always good to have you with us. Well, we are going to begin today's show with a look at the cyber threat from China.
The U.S. Defense Science Board released a report earlier this year outlining cyber breaches of U.S. defense by the Chinese. They include nearly 40 Pentagon weapons programs and 30 defense technologies.
It tracks really nicely with Chinese military priorities. How do you beat U.S. air defenses? How do you let China attack our carriers? How do you preserve China's ICBMs from U.S. missile defense? How do you get advantage in the air and in the sea?
While there have been warnings about China's cyber espionage, the breadth of the list underscores how routine attacks have become.
It's something we raise very directly with the Chinese, and we're going to do so through diplomatic channels and be very consistent.
As the U.S. looks to grow its military presence in the Asia-Pacific, China can use the information to blunt America's military superiority.
It really narrows the gap and it shades the odds in China's direction. We still are militarily superior, no doubt about that, but we're not as superior as we were before all this happened. So some serious risk as a result of these Chinese successes.
Defense contractors declined to say whether their systems had been breached. But recent filings to shareholders indicate these companies see intrusions as a serious risk to their business.
And as we heard just there are new revelations that China used cyber attacks to access data from nearly 40 Pentagon programs, and that is putting increased pressure on the U.S. to take a tough stance against Beijing. Now, the president will meet this week with China's president, and cyber threats are on the agenda. Dee Dee and Jackie, how serious? Let's talk about the serious threats. Now, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said on Friday that these threats are a quiet and insidious threat to the U.S. Agree?
Oh, absolutely. There's two things that could happen because of this. First of all, if we should get into any kind of conflict with China, they'll have a leg up on us, knowing what we're going to do, where we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. Second of all, that 19% of the total national budget that we put into the military, we can kind of kiss that money goodbye, because all that research and development in our weaponry, that is what China is stealing.
Dee Dee, your thoughts on this?
I think it's very, very troubling. I mean, this is something that, we could have World War III, and I don't think this is something that is overstated, because China, they are building everything. They have all these imports. They've got more factories now. They've got more people. They've got more resources, and we have to take that seriously. And now they have our intelligence, and now they possibly have the ability to shut everything down. It's very, very serious. So for Secretary of Defense Hagel to be giving a blunt warning and to be stern is very good, and we cannot go soft on China in this department.
Yeah. I was just going to say, obviously, the president is going to be over talking to the Chinese president. What does he, we want to also be able to be showing that we're cooperative also with China.
We've already been too cooperative. I think we've always been too soft. And it's not only with that, it's also with the economy and with the differential in the commerce, and with, I just think that in the currency rather, and I think that we've got to be very, very, very aggressive, especially with this new cyber war.
So what does President Obama do this week?
Well, not so much what is Obama going to do, but just last night, which was morning, Chuck Hagel, our defense secretary, was at the Shangri-La dialogue, which he started. It's where international countries from international places come together and they talk about things like this. He had mentioned several times China, whereupon the Chinese delegate got up and made a joke about it. So he's really putting the irons to the fire there.
Now, of course, China is the second largest economy, and many in China, if we were to go over and look at the Chinese headlines right now over in Beijing, many in China are worried that the U.S. is trying to contain Beijing's rising economic power. What do you say to that?
look, I mean, we need to be in the Pacific. I mean, that's a smart move for us. You know, and plus with North Korea acting up as they are, look, I mean, we've got South Korea to think about, we've got other entities, so that is just smart for us. And sorry about China's luck if they don't like it, but that is something that we need to think about. And getting back to that, as well as the cyber war, I think it's sort of a deflection from what they're doing.
Well, I think we're not only thinking about it, but we are doing it. We're moving out of the Middle East and putting most of our military into Asia, into that whole Pacific area.
Well, we want to also talk about Australia, of course, because they have also blamed China of a cyber attack. We have our next package. Let's take a look at that.
Headquarters. Despite sophisticated cyber defenses, the layout and location of computer networks inside Canberra's spy agency are now reportedly in the hands of hackers. The cyber attack on one of the construction contractors of the Australia Security Intelligence Organization building came from a server traced to China, Australian media reported Monday. Foreign Minister Bob Carr said the attack would not damage Canberra's ties with Beijing.
But it's got absolutely no implications for a strategic partnership. We have enormous areas of cooperation with China. I won't comment on whether the Chinese have done what is being alleged or not.
Previous cyber attacks forced late design changes to the $600 million building. China's foreign ministry rejected the allegations, saying groundless accusations would not solve cybersecurity issues. Hackers were also reported to have stolen confidential information from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, home to the country's foreign intelligence agency.
And it does seem that we will have an ally with Australia, of course, one of our closest allies anyway, but obviously on this it's good to have a few other countries that are going to support one another in this attack on China as well.
Yeah. Well, it looks like this is the new battlefield. No longer do we need tanks and aircraft carriers, etc., but we could do cyber attacks. And actually, the United States itself has been involved in cyber attacks. Last year, they had the Stuxnet virus, which literally closed down Iran's nuclear program for about a day.
Absolutely.
Well, and Israel's been big on this. I mean, they've been ahead of the curve on cyber warfare. But the thing about China is they're like denying it, they're lying. I mean, there's no way. I mean, Chuck Hagel's not going to be very strict about it and say, hey, look, this is going on, we've got problems with this, and then they're just like, no, we're not doing it.
But what measures can the U.S. really take at this point? I mean, you can take a tough stance, but what is that tough stance?
Yeah, you're right. We can take a stance. The other thing that we can do is something like they're doing at the Shangri-La dialogue, is that we bring various countries together, we open up a dialogue, and we have kind of this cyber security team going on, as we are, as you saw, doing with Australia. There are other countries that could be our allies. And you know, this is like the Wild West. This is the World Wide Web. There are no boundaries.
There's no rules.
There's no rules, you know, and anybody from some kid who's a hacktivist to the government of China can go into warfare.
Well, and I think that's something we need to do. We need to prioritize and make cyber warfare maybe number 1, 2, or 3, and bring in these young kids and think about things a little differently, because it is just, you know, a place where if they shut us down and banks and cyber warfare, I mean, there's even a movie about it now about how, you know, our whole country is completely destroyed and shut down. It's scary.
Well, sure,
because these things could happen.
They could shut down the electrical grid. They could cut off the water supply. They can get into our nuclear program.
So it's very serious.
And it can be every bit as serious as September 11th.
Of course.
And that's what a lot of people are obviously afraid of. But there is also a lot of private companies and organizations that are also a target of these cyber attacks. So why are they going after them as well?
Well, they're in the defense industry. They create,
well, not all of them.
Not all of them. But they create
finance.
Weapons.
Right.
Or finance.
Because if you don't have the money, and if you don't have the electricity, if you don't have, I mean, you shut down any part of this, I mean, and you know, we're at a loss.
I know, it seems like a movie, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but it's real.
Yeah, unfortunately, it can be a true nightmare. And again, I just think our priorities need to shift quickly, because it seems like with tech, it's over here. I think it needs to be at the top of the list now in defense.
But the problem with that is, of course, dollars. And especially, we'll talk about the government, but especially for some of these companies, where do they get the dollars to fight this cyber warfare, if you will?
Well, I kind of think the companies, private industry, as well as the government, this would be something good where they could pair up. I think that you could take the technology and work, with the money, and I think we've really got to make it a top priority and bring in. And we've done that before with government,
right?
Because we know that government tends to not be the most efficient vehicle. So if you're able to bring in experts and people that will fund it, or perhaps help fund it, I think that might be good.
Oh, right, you're talking about them becoming government contractors,
yes,
which we've been doing traditionally.
But when you have the #1 economic superpower, of course, that's the U.S., and the second economic superpower being China, they've got this distrust right now. So where do we go from here in terms of bringing back the trust? We clearly need one another to work together with each other.
It's like a bad marriage.
So what do we do now? Where do we go from here?
I just think peace through strength. I just think we have to be ready. And can we believe them? I think not. I think we've just got to assume the worst and hope for the best. And that might sound negative, but I think when it comes to national security, that is the president's #1 function and #1 goal is to keep us safe and to make sure that we don't have a complete meltdown, which we could. That's how serious it is. So, it's great. We can go over and have dinner and have the conference, but in the end, we've got to be protected.
But is the U.S. completely innocent in this as well?
Absolutely not. As I was saying.
Absolutely we are.
No, look. And together with Israel, Israel and the United States were the ones that went in and shut down Iran's nuclear program. So, no, we are doing cyber warfare. Our enemies are doing cyber warfare. Everybody's doing it.
And of course, we're going to have to be investing more money into this in the coming years as well.
But
again, the question
we
of
have
dollars.
To have a big shift. Yeah, but the dollars have to go there. They just must. The dollars have to go with technology, or we get shut down one time and we're done.
Yeah.
We're going to be in terrible trouble. So, peace through strength, meaning that we've just got to prioritize and we've just got to be very strong in this area.
I'm not sure I would call it strength. What I'm saying is that we need to have that dialogue. I love what Hagel's doing this weekend with his conference. I think if you want to use the analogy of a bad marriage, you have to communicate first.
Whatever. That's fine and good. I'm glad we're going to have to communicate, but I don't think that matters.
I'm glad I'm not in a relationship with you.
Yeah, because you know what? This is one that trust but verify, but I don't even trust. I think we just make sure and we're strong, we're ready to go no matter what, whoever we're dealing with.
Yeah. All right, and again, the private companies, they are just so vulnerable right now.
Yes.
And how they protect themselves in the future is going to be a big question as well.
Yeah, well, there are companies that go in there and do it. They do the forensics. Who hacked into you and when did they hack into you? And those companies are growing.
Well, they need to grow quickly. We need to work with the government and them and put that together, and maybe even make a new part of and I hate adding government, but a new division with the Department of Defense where they just work on this. I just don't think it's big enough, and I don't think there's enough of a priority.
I think Obama's been putting a lot of his energy into the drone program where you don't have boots on the ground, into the cyber attack program where you do not have boots on the ground. I kind of see the whole military thing as that's where it's going, into cyberspace.
Well, I like the way you described it, the Wild West, which it certainly has become because there's no rules, as you said.
Yeah.
So we're certainly going to have to define some of those rules and look ahead because we certainly are a threat right now.
And we need to have those hackers and the youngest and brightest.
Oh, they're there.
Yeah. We need them working for our country.
Well, ladies, don't go away, and don't you go away as well. We're going to be talking about an individual who is using the cyber world to spread some unwelcome messages. We're talking about Anthony Weiner, who has now thrown his hat into the New York mayoral race. But will the 8 million potential voters forgive his scandalous fall from Congress?